One of the absolute best ways to grow as a leader is to find a coach who will not only encourage you, but who will challenge you, inspire you, and pull out the greatness inside of you. Whether you're looking for a leadership coach, a communication coach, or a life coach, Speak With People has options for you. Make sure you check out speakwithpeople.com/coaching and let's schedule a discovery call today and pull out the greatness that you have. Welcome to the Speak With People podcast. My name is Jason Raitz. I'll be your host, and this podcast exists to help you improve your communication skills. Whether you communicate one-on-one, to a team, from a stage, or from behind a screen, we know that when we improve our communication skills as leaders, it exponentially changes everything. It improves our relationships, it improves our leadership skills, and it improves our business skills. So let's get ready to dive into this next episode. Well, how does a Major League Baseball player deal with both the positive and the negative communication, critique, and reviews that come along their way during their career? What has to happen in their development to be able to focus and dwell on everything that is said about them? Why is it so important as a leader to learn how to communicate, especially when they're coaching their team or younger leaders? And what dynamics are most important when it comes to coaching youth? Well, today I am so excited to have a phenomenal guest on the Speak With People podcast. He is a former Major League Baseball player. He is a dad. He's a youth coach. He works with the Cleveland Guardians. He does a ton in his community. Travis, welcome to the Speak With People podcast.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on, Jay. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Well, hey, before we hop in, I thought maybe you could tell our listeners a little bit more about your story. What got you to this place? You know, what are some of the highs and the lows? A little bit more about your family, all that kind of stuff.
Sure. I grew up on a farm in North Dakota, so really small town. I was top 10 in my class, very gifted academically. There was only 8 kids in my class, but I still made the top 10. Went to a junior college in southern Kansas, played baseball there for 2 years. Got drafted by the Texas Rangers. Spent 5.5 years in the minor leagues, and then got called up to the big leagues with Texas. I got traded to Cleveland played there for 10 years. Finished my career with the Yankees, and have been like a special assistant with the Guardians now for several years. Been married for 17 years to my beautiful wife, Amy. We have 3 boys, Blake, Tripp, and Knox, who are 14, 11, and 8, and they're all into baseball, and they keep us busy. So that's kind of the quick 30-second rundown.
Absolutely. So North Dakota, wow. Winters probably were pretty decent there.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about it. When you live in Florida, you forget that there is winter.
Right.
You forget that there's snow. But man, we had there would be times where the wind chill would get to like minus 50, and sometimes you're just driving along and there's snow going, blowing sideways, and it's so flat up there, like you can't see anything when you drive, and it's winters aren't very fun for driving, that's for sure.
Wow. So how did someone from a small town make it all the way to the major leagues? I mean, what a great, awesome story. I mean, I think about the parents nowadays who are, and I coached all of my kids' little league teams, but I mean, they're traveling state to state to state. Some parents are even hiring, private coaches and trainers.
Right.
I mean, I'm guessing that wasn't what your childhood was like.
No, I mean, we just played whatever sport it was. Obviously, like we didn't have a ton of numbers, so we just played the sport. So I did basketball, track, baseball, but baseball was my first love. And then was fortunate to get into a junior college down in Kansas and play year-round, and had some just phenomenal coaches and the Burroughs brothers, and they really kind of helped me develop and grow and have a chance to play professionally.
Wow, that is just phenomenal. What were the years in the minors like? I'm a giant spring training baseball fan, so I would even sometimes take spring training games over a regular season game, unless it's probably the playoffs or World Series. I just love the atmosphere of spring training. When I go to a game, of course, we both live in a great area in Florida where there are,
right,
parks near each other. I love to go early. I love to listen and watch. What were those years like? Was it difficult? Were there moments where you thought, "Oh my goodness, I may never get out of the minors," or did you know like, no, this year's the year?
Yeah, I mean, it's you get the whole gambit. In general, there's this kind of feeling like how brutal the minor leagues are. Like you're paying your dues. It's just the worst place ever. But I remember kind of getting there, and after 2 weeks, didn't have to go to class. Played baseball every day for like 7 hours, and then at the end of 2 weeks, I got like a paycheck for $800, and I was like, "This is the best thing ever." And like even the 8-hour bus trips from Georgia to Maryland, like it's fun. You're hanging out with your buddies.
Yep.
You're watching movies, and I really enjoyed it. It was fun playing in these like really nice stadiums. You get a couple thousand people there, and it's kind of fun to work your ladder up. I think the frustration might be when, you're not moving up as fast as you think you should. But that's just part of paying your dues and making sure that you're ready.
Yep. So in what phase or stage of your career, and maybe it was as early on in high school, I don't know, but when you started to deal with, having to learn how to drown out the negative voices, the negative things being said about you. I mean, leaders, right? When we step into leadership, we're asking for it because we're out front and all that. But I mean, as a player, you're trying to, hone your skills and do all that kind of stuff. And then everybody else has an opinion. How did you learn how to work through that? When did that first start? You first started to realize, wow, okay, I'm being watched and everyone kind of has an opinion about what I'm doing.
Certainly once you get to the big leagues, everything is under a microscope. It was actually like one of the things that I noticed, like my first big league at bat, I got called up and you look out to center field and you're like, there's like 5 TV cameras right there. So you're like, we probably have like 1 million people watching this game. So certainly, sports reporters get paid to have opinions, and typically negativity will sell more than, being positive or
right.
Things like that. So, you really kind of just got to focus on your process. And it's one of the reasons that the clubhouse gets to be very tight knit, because you feel like a little bit of like, it's us against, it's us against everybody. So like, we got to believe in each other. We got to believe in ourselves. Whatever is being said on the outside doesn't really impact us. And,
Yep.
Sometimes you can use it as motivation more than anything.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. And that's so applicable, especially for teams in the workplace, I mean, even for families, with how communication works. One of my my favorite baseball player of all time, Ted Williams. So, played Boston Red Sox, late 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. I mean, you read all his biographies. I mean, the press, they just went after him, and he was awful to the press. I mean, he said horrible things. There's a famous story of him spitting at the crowd once because, he went the exact opposite, dove into that. Did you come across any players in your time where, they just, they kind of leaned into that negativity with negativity a little bit?
Well, there's some really good Ted Williams stories since you brought him up. But as a kid, like I really didn't have like hitting instructors or anything. So I had like The Science of Hitting by Ted Williams, and I would just read that. And that was like my hitting guide. But I remember when you get to Fenway Park, there is this red seat out in right field, which is allegedly where Ted Williams hit like this farthest home run. And like in batting practice, you would hit a ball as far as you could, and it would be 30 rows away from that. And you're like, hey, I know I hit that ball pretty good. Like, I don't know how realistic that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I forgot now. I was rambling on about Ted Williams and I forgot your question.
No, it's so good. But just, did you come across any of the players, that kind of took Ted's angle a little bit?
Yeah. So not really personally, I would say, but definitely like I'm a fan of watching, like the Michael Jordan biography that came out, and it just seemed like, man, he remembered everything negative anybody ever said, and he just used that as fuel. And even when they're giving their Hall of Fame speeches, you could tell it still bothers him to this day. So I was never I was never like that to a point, but
Yeah.
um, I guess it's whatever can motivate you
Yep.
to be at your best.
Well,
Um,
I grew up in Detroit, and so Ann Arbor is not far. And number 12, TB12 was the quarterback of the University of Michigan Wolverines. And, the amount of times I've heard him talk about number 199, it sure did. It sure did fuel him to keep going. So powerful. Well,
yep.
give us what was one of the favorite moments that you had in your career? You had a long career. What was one of those moment stories that just stood out as, man, I wish I could relive that moment?
Yeah, I would say from an individual standpoint, I just remember like tying the major league record for grand slams in a season, and it's almost surreal in the moment, just like
Right.
holy cow, like I actually am tied for a major league record, like I can't believe it, like this
Yep.
is a minor miracle. Um, but without a doubt, I would say from a team standpoint, I only made the playoffs one time, so our one time in the playoffs, it was incredible. Like I mean, the intensity like on every pitch was like I'd never seen before. And then we're actually able to beat the Yankees in the first round in Yankee Stadium, given like very little chance to do that.
Right.
But certainly like having the dog pile at Yankee Stadium was something that I'll never forget.
Man, going into the dark side, right?
Right.
That's just incredible. And I get in trouble all the time because I'll show up. I volunteer with a youth group as a small group leader, and I'll have on a Yankees hat, or I'll have on a Blue Jays hat, or a Tigers hat, and I'll get in trouble. They're like, "What is wrong with you?" And I'm like, I'm a baseball fan. I love it. But that must have been, just absolutely incredible to do that. So does your Grand Slam record still hold then?
Yeah, I'm tied with Don Mattingly with 6. I think it's 6.
Because
But I got up with the bases loaded with a month left in the season and got hit in the hand and broke my hand. So, you figure you might have had another 4 or 5 at bats. So who knows, if it could have happened. But certainly
oh,
thankful to have a part of that record.
absolutely, absolutely, not so bad to be mentioned in the same vein with Don Mattingly.
Absolutely. It's grand slams are, yeah, I don't want to say that they're fluky, but, you only get 20, 25 at bats a season with the bases loaded. So everything kind of has to line up really good.
And and of course, the article I read, and this was from last year. You're the first to hit what was it, 5 before the All-Star break?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So it was just one of those years that uh, when I got up with the bases loaded, just for whatever reason, I hit some home runs during that, and I would say like the majority of time when you're up there hitting, like if you try to hit home runs, only bad things are going to happen.
Right.
Very rarely would you go up there and say, I'm going to hit a home run and then do it. But if you try to hit a home run, you would strike out or pop up or hit a weak ground ball, and you're like, oh, okay, I got to get back to a good approach.
Yep.
But I remember too, just after a few home runs, like you're getting close, and you're like, bases are loaded. I'm trying to go deep, and you would hit a home run. Is kind of amazing.
I can't. I can't even imagine how incredible. I grew up, yeah, I read everything, read The Science of Hitting, went through the whole deal, everything Ted Williams. I was always, I loved his quote, I want to be, known as the greatest hitter of all time. Look, there goes Ted Williams, the greatest. And I loved one of the articles I read once, the news reporter asked him, what's it like having all this God-given ability, to be this incredible? And he's like, well, if swinging the baseball bat 1,000 times a day, is my God given ability, then than something else. But you must have seen it. Today's world, and maybe it's always been this way, but maybe with technology and how quick everything is, and we're able to get information, people want things tomorrow. What advice would you give to leaders, especially as you're in a system, you're trying to learn your craft, you want it all to happen tomorrow? What advice would you give them to kind of hang in there and just be patient and keep going?
Yeah, I mean, I think you really have to enjoy the process. Like, it's very easy to be results driven. you hear like Nick Saban talk about it in football all the time, but like part of what makes people really good is they really love their work and they really love the grind, and they like putting in the practice hours, and they kind of know that like this is where I make my money, like in the grind and in the practice and in the fundamentals and just kind of perfecting these things. So if all you want to do is hit home runs and you want the doubles, like it's going to be really tough to get there and probably won't happen. But if you really enjoy like the hours in the batting cage and like the talking with the coach and making adjustments and looking at film, like it's going to happen like through hard work and like good quality work.
I can't even imagine. My dad and I went to a Tigers game last week out in Lakeland, and our kids, my kids had got us tickets for Christmas, and we walked into the stadium, and every single time, I don't know what it is with me, but I'm starting to cry. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is the best thing. What a gift and a joy it must have been to be able to walk into those stadiums every day. How did you not take it for granted when you were there? How did you? I love what you just talked about. I mean, that's such amazing advice to leaders, loving the grind, in it. But I'm sure there was probably moments where you're like, okay, how am I going to get through this? What advice would you give?
Right. I mean, an athletic career can be like so short lived. I mean, there's just so much competition, so many people in the levels right behind you that want your job. So, I think someone kind of told me a quote sometime, like play today like it's your last day, because you never know. Like there's injuries, freak things happen. So, it's really kind of just trying to stay in the moment and be like, okay, I'm going to give my best effort today. And, kind of having that be your focus as opposed to like, worrying about external things that you can't control. But I can control my effort and my attitude today and go out there and do the best you can.
Yep. Oh, I love that. I love that. We were sitting there, and I turned around, and Jim Leland was sitting right behind me, and I'm like, "Okay, this is fun."
Jim Leland was great. I love Jim Leland.
I can't imagine. So, speaking of coaches, who is your favorite in terms of how they communicated? I'm sure you had all different coaches who communicated in different ways, either harsh or soft or, however. What type of communication from a coach really resonated with how you were wired?
Man, that's a good question. And you kind of hit on it. I had, my college coach was very intense. Off the field, he was like a father figure. You could talk to anything about him, but on the field, he was like very intense. And then in my professional career, I was really drawn to like batting coaches, because you'd spend, 1 to 2 hours a day in the batting cage talking with them. So you develop those really good relationships. And, the batting coaches I really liked made the process fun. Like I look to go into the cage every day because, even if we didn't get anything accomplished baseball wise, we were going to have a fun time, so I think finding that happy zone of like, hey, we're getting our work in, we're getting better, but we're also really enjoying it. Like, it's okay to like have fun and really enjoy what you're doing. And like, that's going to make you want to work even harder. So I think I was really drawn to like the positivity, but it can't just be like positive with nothing behind it. There was like good information, so just, that happy place of like, we're positive, we're getting better, we're working hard, but, we're having a good time in the process.
Yeah. Yeah. How many coaches did you have in your time in Cleveland?
2 managers and probably 4 hitting coaches.
Okay. And so you spend probably most of your time with the hitting coaches?
Yeah. I mean, you would, the different coaches in different areas, like infield coach, managers, stuff like that. But, you do a lot of individual time in the cages, out on the field for batting practice with your hitting coaches.
Yeah. Did your team or does the major league, do they do anything to equip players with communication skills when, all of a sudden reporters are putting microphones in front of your face and then they want to know what you think about this? Or was it just sort of you're on your own and you had to figure out how to answer the right way?
There's going to be 30 reporters coming up to you like, good luck, kid. It's when they believe that you're going to make your big league debut, or even like in the minor leagues, but definitely like in spring training and stuff, they'll have somebody, usually it's like a former media, maybe even present day media, that will come and just give you some advice of, you know, things to watch out for, things not to say, kind of just making you very aware of
Yes.
how powerful your words are. Sometimes they'll ask you a question, like, do you think your manager should get fired? And if you say
Oof.
like, no, I don't think my manager should get fired, they try to put those words in your mouth so the comment appears kind of negative. Um, so typically they would do a really good job every year of having you be prepared. And if something during the year came up that was like, ooh, this is going to be an issue, then they would get you together and kind of talk through like, hey, this is probably a good way to respond to this.
It's right. So important. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, for a lot of our listeners, they work in a workplace where probably everybody has come across that one coworker who's always trying to get you to flub up your words or say something
Yeah.
you didn't mean. I mean, yeah. So having those skills to be able to deal with that is just so important. When it came to your teammates, what were maybe some of the skills you tried to live out when it came to communicating with them, or what were some of the best practices you saw in other teammates that, communicated the best?
Yeah. So I think one of the best things that I heard was you want to build relationships with guys before you just start, giving them like quote unquote feedback. So like if there was a situation that came up or somebody didn't hustle hard to first base, rather than the first time I go talk to this kid and just say like, hey, we got to run hard. You're representing the team. You got to run hard. That's not going to be received very well because the only thing he's ever heard from me was me getting on him.
Right.
But if I've spent like, spring training and the first months of the season, like getting to know him, like he knows that I like legitimately care and love for him. Like then if I come to him and say something like, hey, that wasn't a good look, we need to tighten that up, it's going to be received a lot better because I've established a relationship and that I care about him.
Oh, I mean, so foundational. I mean, imagine how many leaders how many folks would not have the headaches that probably they've experienced if they built the trust first with their coworkers.
Yeah.
That's such an important thing.
That's foundational, a big part of it, and something that helped me tremendously.
Yep. Sorry to geek out just a little bit more, but who was the toughest pitcher you faced in your career?
So I would say, obviously, like all of the big name guys and the guys that are always in the running for best pitchers are all really, really good. It did seem like when people would have a Cy Young year, they were just even that much sharper, where you would have at bats where you might not get a pitch to hit. They were just locating their breaking balls on the outside corner and things like that. So, Verlander was very good. Johan Santana, Mariano Rivera just felt like he never gave me a pitch to hit ever. Yeah. But there's so many that are tough. And what's great about the big leagues too is like they might bring in a left-handed reliever to face you, and he's got like a 6 ERA, and you go up there thinking, this is fresh meat. I'm going to destroy this, and like you can't pick the ball up off him, and everybody's hitting him, but for whatever reason, like you can't pick up his slider, or you can't see him for whatever reason. So it was literally every at bat was a challenge. And well, kind of to the point as well, I remember getting called up and facing someone who didn't have great numbers, and you watch him on TV and you're like, oh man, I would do really well off this guy. And you get up there and you're like, holy cow, this is a really good changeup. Like maybe the best changeup I've ever faced.
Yep.
So just that's what was great about it is, you're facing the best pitchers in the world, and they're all different. They all attack you differently. They all got different strengths and weaknesses, release points, how you see it. So it's righties, lefties, different arm angles. It's a tremendous challenge.
Did you ever get a chance? I can't remember when Interplay came in, but did you ever get a chance to go up against Greg Maddux?
Yeah, I did. I believe he was in either Chicago or San Diego, or maybe both. So it's impressive. Like you're facing him, and it's you're not blown away by his stuff. It's not like you just get up there and he's blowing your doors off. But it's just like everything's on the corner. If it misses, it's off the plate. Again, there's nothing really good to hit, and you kind of got to go up there with an approach of I'm gonna try to hit the ball the other way or take a single. Like it's those guys that do a really good job of keeping it in the ballpark because you don't get a whole lot to hit.
Right. Right. So many movies where the catcher is playing mind games with the batter. Is that real in Major League Baseball? Are they allowed to do that or not so much?
Some guys would do it a little bit, and it wouldn't necessarily be like in the movie Major League or something
Right.
like that, those conversations. But there were some catchers that would just chat you up the whole at bat, and you're kind of like, "Can you please be quiet? Like I'm trying to focus in."
Right.
Or there were certain guys that just were talking with the umpire the whole time. So like you're up there hitting, and in the background is just this conversation of the catcher and the umpire, and it was so annoying, But I think that was probably the best ploy, is like, let me just talk and try to have a conversation with him while he's hitting, and it's
Yep.
It was very distracting.
What was it like when you went from, so many years with Cleveland and now you're with New York? You got to spend a good chunk of time with one city. Was that a real tough thing for you and your family? Was it exciting because it was New York? How did that go down for you?
Yeah, kind of all of the above. I was really comfortable in Cleveland. It's like, everybody there,
Yeah.
like everybody in the building. And now all of a sudden you're going to a place where, a couple guys on the team, but it's just kind of learning a whole new group of people. And I had heard a lot of stories about New York media, how tough that was going to be. Growing up in North Dakota, like I was, when we would go to New York, I kind of just stayed in my hotel room. Like I didn't get out a whole lot. The city was, it was a huge city. So,
yeah,
a little out of my comfort zone there. So those are some things to think about. But then at the same time, I'm like, they always have really good teams, and it's a really good park for right-handed hitters. And, it's going to be good for me to get out of my comfort zone a little bit and try something new and grow. And, overall, like I had a really good experience there.
Yeah. Yeah. What was Derek Jeter like?
He was incredible. There are guys that, you hear good things about, and then when you see him in person, you're kind of like, yeah, this isn't the real deal. But Derek Jeter, I don't think I've ever seen anybody that had as much demand for his time. Like everybody wanted his time, and he just handled it like seamlessly. He was so good at managing his time. He was very personal with everybody. Again, like he knew all the clubhouse workers. I guess he's there for so long, but he treated everybody great. Like he was like a legit leader.
I love it. So turning quarters a little bit, youth sports is just, life for many, many, many families, and so you now are on the other end where, you were able to experience it all. And now you've got boys playing, what's that like being on the other end? Or do you ever find yourself just going, this is so much fun? Or do you find yourself going, falling into the traps of maybe, trying to, not enjoy it as much as possible because because you've already been there, you can see it all.
Yeah. When I'm coaching baseball or watching baseball, I can view my kids as like the lens of, I've seen 2,000-3,000 baseball games in my life. Like, I know it's like a very slow developmental journey, and like after every game we can kind of talk through stuff. But if we were to do like flag football or basketball, it's like, what your kids should do, and they're not doing it. And you're kind of like I want to be the guy that like yells like, "Hey, move your feet," just whatever that looks like. But it's such a good opportunity for kids to just grow through sports, the successes and the failures, being good teammates, learning how to work hard. There's so much that can be learned there. So sometimes it can be frustrating when, parents live and die with every pitch or every play, and they get too crazy into it, and they don't allow like the kids to learn from their mistakes.
Yes. Do you have any concerns for the future of youth baseball, especially? So when I coached, I probably 8 years of little league teams. My boys were 5, all the way up, and then they broke my heart and decided to not play anymore. But I had probably about a half dozen really yucky moments where parents are, like you just said, living and dying in every pitch, screaming at the 13 or 15-year-old umpire like, they are. Do you have any of those moments where you're like, oh, this is going in or do you have genuine positivity for the future of it, that, parents will be okay. Because you see those stories sometimes of the umps being or parents going at each other. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's I don't know that parents are going to change anytime soon. In fact, it almost seems to be getting like a little more intense as we go. You see parents taking their kids to lessons several times a week. They're working out and training at 9, 10 years old. So,
Yep.
They're kind of missing out on the experience to kind of have fun and enjoy it. Like, it's almost becoming like a job at 9 and 10 when that stuff should be a little bit later on.
Right. Right.
And, being in Florida, like, one of the dangers is we can play year round. So they're not getting proper rest. They're not allowed to play other sports. They're not allowed to, just kind of be a kid and have fun, which is good too. So, growing up in North Dakota, like, I could only play 2 months out of the year that it wasn't snowing.
Right.
But, definitely here in Florida, like, teams are lifting earlier. Like, they have team lifts in 8th and 9th grade. And it's, it's getting like more and more serious at a younger age, which, has its pluses and minuses, but, the game always survives. It always keeps going.
Yeah. Any advice to those parents who, they find themselves at games getting feistier and feistier and feistier? Any communication advice you just say to them? I mean, it's okay for parents to cheer and all that, but there's just that certain level of parent who's, they're coaching from the stands, they're screaming from the stands. Any advice to them?
Yeah, just sit back and watch the game and enjoy it for good or bad, and just kind of know, like, you screaming like can undercut the coach. Like, maybe the coach is saying like, "Hey, I'm working on this," and you're screaming this. Now your son is confused. Your kid strikes out on a questionable pitch on the outside corner, and you're blowing up the umpire. You're embarrassing your kid, but at the same time, like, don't tell your kid that, "Hey, that's a ball. You don't swing at that." Let your kid make an adjustment.
Yep.
Hey, this is the way the umpire is calling it today. I got to make an adjustment. And there has to be accountability. So I think when the parents are like overactive and, everything with my son is perfect, he's not doing anything wrong, you really miss the opportunity to make adjustments and learn what accountability is, So when I coach, I typically don't let my kids talk about the umpires at all. Like, the calls are the calls.
Yep.
We're not going to lose a game because an umpire made a bad call. We're going to lose a game because we didn't play well enough.
Right. What kind of, as a coach, when you have such a great opportunity to mold, to speak truth into, youth's lives, into their minds. What kind of approaches do you take as you speak one-on-one to each of your players, as you speak to the team? What are some steps you take to be able to do that in a healthy way?
Yeah, so I try to, like we talked about earlier, develop good relationships with all the kids.
Yeah.
When they walk in through the gate, "Hey, how you doing? How's school been?" And just, I want to make it like a very fun environment. I want the kids to like love coming to practice. And then I try to give like really clear vision on everything. Like, granted, there is like a little bit of, variance, but this is how we hit. These are the mechanics. These are the approach. This is how we field ground balls, and kind of like give out very clear vision. Talk a lot about being good teammates, and this is the way that we're going to treat each other. These are things that aren't allowed. So eventually, like, once the kids have played for me for a little bit, they kind of know what to expect. It's going to be a very positive environment. We're going to be good teammates. We're going to be ultra competitive, and just try to get the most out of our ability and develop. But at the end of the day, it's not about winning trophies. It's, development. And I really want the kids to love the game of baseball. So at the end of the season, I wanted to be like, "Oh man, I can't believe the season's over. I can't wait when we start back up."
Yep. Oh, and that just speaks to culture building, because we've both probably been in, organizations or teams where, the culture wasn't as healthy as it could be. I mean, and it every once in a while, there's just that, even if there's just a little bit of toxicity, one team member, one player who brings that toxic attitude. What's some of your thoughts or advice, as team members, to be able to, everybody's recognizing that toxicity,
Right.
Again, how do you help pull that out of them?
Yeah. So a lot of times that's just having like tough conversations, like with the kid or the parent or both.
Yep.
And just kind of like letting them know what expectations are. And hey, this is the way that we're going to run the ship. And if you're not on board with that, or you completely disagree with that, hey, I totally get it. And, maybe this isn't the team for you, but, the kids on my team are going to, or the kids and the parents on my team are going to follow to some basic standards, which helps create a good environment where we can grow.
Yeah. Oh, boy, that's so good. That's so good. Well, our time has flown by, and I could probably ask you another 100 questions, but you really have given us some really great gold and some wisdom, especially with team building and communication. So I really appreciate it. I did want to ask, just from your Cleveland, I get a lot of hate over the years because I'm in the camp that probably would pick LeBron over Michael. I know it's just kind of crazy. And I don't know if there was, since you lived in Cleveland, if there's something you had to sign that says, LeBron. But we talked about Michael earlier. Do you think players from that genre, I think of, players like LeBron's from the 2000s and up, had to deal with a level of scrutiny on social media that generation, the 90s, the 80s, and down. I mean, yes, the media have always been the media, as we talked about with Ted Williams. But now, everywhere they go is on video. Everything is a scene. Do you think those older generations could have been as successful as they were if they, had all that scrutiny? Or do you think you just kind of, each generation figures it out as they go?
Yeah, that's a good question. Even when I played, which was 02 through 13, I didn't have any social media. We just kind of had papers or, the internet or whatever that you could go on and look. But in general, like, I tried to stay away from it as much as I could and just kind of focus on what I could control.
Yep.
But nowadays, like, you're kind of encouraged to have all the social medias to kind of grow your brand, and you have marketing deals, or it gets your name out there, it gets you more popular, and that's considered like a good thing. So, it'd be really tough to have social media accounts and not read what people are saying to you. Like, I'm sure they get tons of negative comments. So it's just a different level of scrutiny. Everything is like up to the second, instantaneous. I don't know. I'm kind of glad that I wasn't playing in this era. Like, there's such a demand for, access to the players and all of that stuff. So, just having sports reporters and a newspaper probably is not much compared to what it is today. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Before I let you go, we do rapid fire questions with our guests. We're building a communication and leadership skills library. It sounds really awesome. It is. It's just a Google spreadsheet, but we put everybody's recommendations on there, and it's a growing list. So we talk a lot about speakers on this podcast. Do you personally have a favorite speaker that just every time you hear them, boy, they just fill you up? You would recommend them to someone else?
So I know this is lightning round, but there's a lot of pressure here if it goes on some document that people are reading. So I actually like to drive in my car, and I listen to like a lot of just sermons from different pastors that I really like. And Craig Rochelle is one of my favorites. He's fantastic on leadership, and just has like so many good things to say, some great books. So I would say him.
He's amazing. Absolutely. Is there a podcast or YouTube channel that's either guilty pleasure or on the development end that every episode you're just like, ooh, this fills me up?
Now I just feel like I'm going to answer Craig Rochelle to everything.
No, I love it.
No, he has a really good podcast. I do listen to like some sports stuff as well, but in general, it's like my YouTube and podcast probably run the same. Like, I don't really listen to a ton of podcasts, but like on YouTube I do. So
Yep. I love it. Is there a book that you would recommend? Hey, every leader, you've really got to read this book.
That's a good one. I would say like 99% of my reading would be the Bible. And I
Yep.
kind of just really enjoy how Jesus approached leadership as
Yep.
far as, being a servant leader. And one thing that was really cool about Jesus is he asked a lot of questions. So kind of getting to the why of why people are doing things. And I think when you ask questions to people, they kind of start pulling out their own answers, and then it becomes something that they own rather than you telling them something. So,
Yes.
I mean, that's something I love, that the power of the question.
I love that. Travis, I can't thank you enough. Like, really appreciate your time. I know this conversation is going to be a great benefit to our listeners, our audience. And so just really appreciate you sharing your wisdom and your story. Just love it. Thank you.
Yeah, this was fantastic. I appreciate you having me on, Jason. This was amazing.
Absolutely. Is there anywhere online that you want us to send people to find out more about you?
No.
I love it. I love it. That's fantastic. I love it.
I don't really have much as far as social media, so I'm boring, I guess.
No, not at all. I think that's a fantastic answer. I love it. Well, thank you for joining us on another episode of the Speak with People podcast. We hope that you were encouraged. We hope that you were inspired and challenged to improve your communication skills. I want to thank you again for being a part of the Speak with People podcast community. Make sure you don't miss out on being a part of the Speak with People Facebook community group. Just head to Facebook, type in Speak with People, scroll down and join our community, because every single day we're encouraging each other. We're helping each other to improve our communication skills. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next episode.